In January of 2019, the Battletech franchise made a major turn. For the better. Battletech, a game of armored combat, would be released. This would bring about a reimagined visual portion of the setting, keeping much of the spirit of the original, but modernizing it in a way which had never happened before. The first box set included the mighty and stunning examples of the awesome Battlemaster, Catapult, Thunderbolt, Wolverine, Shadowhawk, Commando, and Locust. These would be only the first mechs though, before the stunningly successful Clan Invasion Kickstarter took place, and truly finished the revitalization of the lineup. For the first time ever, Battletech had crisp, solid, plastic miniatures, as well as a striking, distinct, and well thought out art appearance for the world itself. Art is the single largest contributor to the success of a tabletop game, followed by gameplay, and then story. But all three of these need to work together to flourish. Battletech is finding this fully for the first time. But in this video, I'm going to selfishly talk about a few things that I want to see. Not in narrative terms, no, but in terms of reimagined designs from outside of the typical range of 3025, 2750, and 3050. You know, the most classical of all the eras. In other words, I'm going to go over a list of mechs I want to see reimagined, in plastic, with new art and visuals, much like the other mechs I've received. I'm also going to talk a bit about how much I want each one of them reimagined, at least on some designs, as a handful of these truthfully only need to be stylized, and others need a major rework, at least in my opinion. So let's get started. The big red list is here. What mechs do I want to see in plastic in the coming months and years? I'm going to be breaking this up into two sections, namely the 31st and 32nd centuries, just because there is a real divide here in how people view the franchise. So let's get started with the most classical of eras, the 31st century. There is not going to be any particular order, there are just mechs that jump out to me the most. You'll also note that there won't be a huge number of clan designs here, because frankly, most clan mechs before 3060 have already been put to plastic. By the way, this list is also going to be pretty long. It also won't include any mechs from 2750 that are still quote missing unquote, as I assume that those mechs will appear at some point. This registry was really hard to build, and actually started with over 30 mechs just from the 31st century alone. And that's just too many to cover in one video before tackling Dark Age and ilClan. Also, this ended up being longer than I expected it to be, which kind of just shows that I really love a lot of these mechs and I really want them to get their just due. The first one we're going to be covering is the one that people know I want to see get redesigned the most, which is the Grand Titan. I always loved its loadout. I love that it's basically a Free Worlds League Atlas, and I think it's been criminally kind of forgotten since the mid-90s. When I was a kid, this was actually the second mech I ever owned. Now, just to be fair, this thing does need a pretty radical reimagining, at least in my opinion. The lasers on the shoulders look plainly bad, and it's just a bit too blocky, and too much, unfortunately, like Optimus Prime. So much so that Plog even put roll out on one of its shoulders in the art for this. That imagery might be what they try to capture with a redesign, but honestly, if anything, it should get a radical transformation. It's the Grand Titan, not the face of Transformers. There are much better ways to redesign the head, and there are better ways to rebuild the torso. I think most of what its current appearance is can sincerely be discarded. I don't think it will be, but I think the Grand Titan should be set free, and allowed to be its own distinct thing. But those are just what I would want to see. Either way, this is one of the mechs I want to see reimagined and delivered in plastic more than almost any other right now. I also want to add, I do in fact love the Grand Titan. I'll be covering this one very soon, but yes, I do want to see the Salamander get a plastic miniature. Most of its design, outside of its atrocious hips, just need to be modernized in my view. There's honestly nothing more satisfying than having this big amphibian just blasting targets with LRMs, either directly or indirectly, turn on turn. It's a savage. I'd like to see a proper recognition guide loadout for it too, and I'd love to see a modernized appearance for it. It's my all-time favorite Inner Sphere LRM boat. So much of the War Dog's appearance is top-notch, and always has been, at least regarding the upper body. The fact it literally has no pelvis and its legs are connected to its arms like the Nova is a pretty big problem though. It does need a radical redesign, but so much of its fundamental look is cool. It needs a lot of reworking. Like, a lot. I don't envy CGL's artists in reimagining this one, but I do think it's deserving of it. It's an interesting, innovative design for its time, even if it is plagued by one-shot SRM2s like the Grand Titan. Ugh. Please give better configuration for the later eras. One of my favorite Comguard and Blakest mechs is the Grim Reaper, and in most of its forms it is absolutely fantastic. Not only does it have a distinct appearance, and one that can be modernized with only a few small changes, but it's also got the rule of cool in many ways. There aren't many mechs out there that look like it, or perform like it even. Heavily armored, very heavily gunned for an Inner Sphere mech of its era, and looking cool to boot. I would love to see this thing in plastic, and I'd love to see it streamlined, reworked, and adapted into the modern art style. I can't wait to cover it soon, too. Blake would definitely approve of this one. Clearly, he must have inspired the designers. Praise be unto Blake. Some, who follow the live streams for the channel, wonder why I love 3055 so much, but honestly, there are just so many cool designs in it. I had to trim this list very much just to make it manageable, which included me massacring the 3055 portion of it, and it's still easily the biggest part of all of this, at least for the 31st century. So, yes, I want to see the Stealth. It's a fun, well-armed, close-range, fast scouting mech with heavy armor. I also think its appearance is absolutely awesome, so yeah, I want to see the Stealth given life. The Lyrans and Fedsons would be well served by this mech making an appearance, and I'd love to see it modernized. Many will know that I am very big on the Hollander, especially after the video I did for it back during the Mercenaries Kickstarter. I am also a huge fan of Alan Blackwell's version of the design. I'm actually not a huge fan, visually, of the original, in almost any way. I think it looks weird, lopsided, and just kind of off. Funnily enough, I actually prefer the original art of it from TRO 3055 over the TRO 3055 upgrade art even. Still, it's an iconic design all the same. It's a running Gauss rifle. It's just Gaussing it up at every corner. I'm still using the Alan Blackwell fan art for the video even, as honestly my preference for it goes so far beyond the original it's not even funny. Still, that's enough of me bashing the Hollander's original art. I am hopeful it gets a true, thorough redesign all the same, as it's a great mech, and it really deserves to be stunning on the tabletop and in art. I just think that making it too much like the original would be kind of disappointing. But still, I would love to see it either way, and it needs a huge redesign. What if the Hollander had a PPC and was made by the Free Worlds League and looked like Dr. Robotnik, but without a beard? Well, my friends, you've got the Jackal. One of the greatest mechs of all time. Well, that's not true, but it's pretty cool. I've been a fan of this tubby little PPC boat since it was introduced, and again, it operates in a very similar way to the Hollander. I can't wait to cover it, and I do hope in the sooner than later future, we get to see this mech in plastic and very much redesigned. Look at those legs, oh my god. I do think it needs a pretty significant one, but what they'll do with it, only CGL and its artists know. The first big one from TRO 3060 and ahead, and one of the only ones I could really think of that needed a model and modernization from those resources, is the Men Shen. A beautiful Capellan mech, and one which really deserves to be re-looked at. I do think the mech needs a plastic model sooner rather than later. It also needs a pretty radical modernization, as it were. Its current form is just too far from the current style of Battletech, so it does need to be very thoroughly re-looked at. It's made it on my shortlist here, for models that I would want to see put to plastic. And one other Capellan mech from this era also has arrived at the same area. as I think that they are broadly just really big leaps over their competitors, visually, from 3060. There just aren't many 3060 or 3067 mechs that really stand out to me, that haven't already been touched on, and I think the Shen does in fact stand out. Probably my favorite mech from the 3060s, the Lao Hu is visually impressive, plays well, and really does deserve its time in the sun. There isn't even much that needs to be reimagined, just adapting it to the current style would be enough to make this an absolutely fantastic mech in terms of its appearance. Mechs like these make you want to take up the sword for celestial wisdom, don't they? And I personally hope that we see this mech sooner, rather than later. There are a set of mechs that have already been remade, but we've yet to receive plastic miniatures for them, so I'm lumping them all together here. The Grand Crusader, Raijin, and Nexus, in my view, should all get plastic releases. The fact that they're already made digitally gives me hope that we'll see them sooner rather than later, to be honest. But all the same, they look solid, and they're very close to my heart, from descending from the old Comstar sourcebook originally. So yes, I want to see these come out. It'd be amazing. And these are not the only thing I want to see from the blessed followers of Blake either. It comes up often, because these are the main winners, visually and thoughtfully, from the Blakist era. And I don't mean winning the setting, but I mean from their visuals and the art around them. The Celestials are some of the coolest Battlemechs to have ever been made for Battletech post-3058, and it'd be impossible to say that they aren't distinct and fascinating in their own right. They get even cooler when you factor in their very unique playstyles. The setting will never really feel fleshed out until these monsters make their appearances, and they're honestly the only reason to even consider playing in the Blakist era, at least in my opinion. I am of course talking about the Celestial series. The Malik, Prita, Grigori, Diva, Seraph, and of course the Archangel, my personal favorite, are all mechs I'd love to see brought forward with just a standard modernization visually, and striking, fantastic plastic miniatures. I hope we get these within the next few years. They're just amazing. I am also really happy to see that there seems to be a genuine organic level of support from the community to see these designs revisited. I think they're incredible, and I think they really made the Blakist factions, as more of these did come out later from the Blessed Order, really a sight to behold. As I mentioned, most of the clan big hitters from the 31st century have already been covered. That really only leaves a few out in the cold. I was going to mention the Savage Coyote too, but just because I think it looks cool. But it's a hard sell and hard to justify. I think the Mad Cat too, however, deserves a miniature. There just aren't many distinct, serious clan mechs remaining from the 31st century as a whole. It's a fantastic looking design, and even right now it has one of the best Iron Wind miniatures from its generation, even if it's starting to look a bit long in the tooth. A plastic facelift for this mech would be fantastic to see. Even in terms of its appearance, I just don't see what needs to be radically adjusted or addressed. Even though it gets a bit of a stigma from being a weird follow-up to the Timberwolf, and not a wholly original design, I think the Mad Cat 2 is one of the coolest mechs of the entire clan roster, and I'd love to see it come to life. I'd get more than a few, just to be clear. There are an abundance of Dark Age and ilClan era mechs, and of course I'd love to see all of them in plastic. Well, that's not entirely true. I'd love to see a ton of them in plastic, because there are many that deserve their due. I'm just going to go over the ones I really think deserve it the most. Funnily enough, most of these aren't really, from the Clicks game. The original designs that CGL commissioned from this era and ahead, by and large, are the best of it, and look truly remarkable. But Red, I hear you cry. You've already listed the Celestials. Well, how about second Celestials? Two designs from this era, with one in particular probably being my second favorite Dark Age and ilClan era medium mech, are the medium Kefir Battlemech and the heavy Euresis. I think these deserve the same love and attention the Celestials get, especially if there's going to be a focus on new eras going forward. I will say, of course, that with the Blakest being dead, I don't expect these to be made, at least not anytime soon. And that's a shame. I think their designs are truly fantastic, and I'd love to see them get a facelift and plastic miniatures. But you can't always get what you want. But this isn't about that. This is what I would want to see. Probably my favorite Republic design, largely because it's a very Comstar-y design, and I think it's one of the breakouts from the 3140s TROs, as well as from TRO Dark Age, and that is the Lament. Because it is an incredible looking mech, and it performs extremely well. I think it being adapted over to the Scroggins art style would be superb. The real problem is, canonically, there isn't really a place for it to go. The pubs were eaten by the wolves, so maybe it's just going to end up being a wolf mech for a while before it gets shoveled off into the abyss? It's a real shame, visually and in-game. This thing is a real killer. Probably the best Republic mech out there of the entire dedicated batch. And I would love to see it in plastic. There isn't much to say here, other than this 20-tonner might be my favorite non-locust light mech in the entire game. No, it's not great, but it's a vastly superior, lighter urban mech in my opinion, actually fulfilling the role that was originally intended for the meme machine out there. Just a solid little 20-ton disposable infantry support omnimech. Plasma rifles, heavy PPCs, and an assortment of other nightmares for all. Celestial Wisdom must be great, for it has brought us the Gwyn. It doesn't even need a major redesign, it just needs to be plastic. What a fantastic mech. One of the few periphery powers with comparatively cutting-edge domestic designs, the Magistracy of Canopus has two great machines in the form of the Agrotera and the Calliope. While it's incredibly unlikely, at least in my estimations, that we'll get a periphery box, let alone a Dark Age or ilClan periphery box, it does not change my opinion that I would love to see these brought to life in plastic form. I, of course, don't really see that happening, but one can dream, can't they? Even in terms of designs, very little needs to be changed to have them brought over to the modern style of Battletech. These mechs are from the late Dark Age developments, just prior to the new art style, so they were already from an era of largely good, solid art direction. Maybe the periphery fans will be tossed a bone. I don't even like Canopus that much, but I would get a few of these. You know what's great? The fact the Eris already exists in resin form, as a premium mech from Catalyst Game Labs. This is one of my favorite machines to appear from the recognition guides, not only because it's a purple bird mech, because as you all know, purple bird is in fact strong, but also because it just has a neat backstory, incredible look, and has a decent tabletop profile to back up these as well. It's like a super evolved Wolverine 6M, and I absolutely love it. So why do I want it in plastic? Because plastic is a better material to deal with than resin. Even though I have 4 premium Erises, I'd still love to get these in plastic too. Also, it'd be a great addition for any kind of Free Worlds League Dark Age component. And the digital model already exists for it. So yes, the Eris is one of the biggest ones on this list for me. Bring on the plastic. Ain't no party like a purple bird party because the purple bird party don't stop. I really love TRO Dark Age's mechs as a whole, and the Anzu is near the top of the Dark Age mechs as a whole, at least among heavies, for me personally. It's a fun trooper mech from the time, one of the few Inner Sphere 60-tonners that isn't a cavalry mech, and is built for more straight-up fighting trooper duty, or in other words, stand-up fights. I also love it because it has such a cool appearance, as I think it's one of the best designs to come out of the Dark Age sourcebooks. It's a pocket warhammer, or a slow hellbringer, and I love it. It's a great component to almost any unit, and I want to see this thing make it to plastic. These are currently available from Ironwind Metals, certainly, but plastic is just way easier to work with. and offers better scaling, visually. And making this thing line up with the new look from Scroggin's team would just be fantastic. So yeah, I want a plastic Anzu. The Purple Bird rave continues with the Giuliano, a mech I recently covered on the channel. Almost everything I said about the Anzu applies to the Giuliano in terms of its sharp look and interesting backstory. It is also currently available through Ironwind Metals, but at the end of the day, this one is near the top for me for 32nd century assault mechs that I want in plastic. Such a cool look, such a fun design, and of course it's a Purple Bird machine. No biases here, no sir. It's like an awesome crossed with an SRM boat, especially in its clan upgrade tech form. I'd love to see this brought forward a little bit visually to match the current art. But yeah, a great mech, and it deserves to be in plastic. It would be very hard for me to say which Dark Age mech is my absolute genuine favorite among favorites, but the Tenshi is always loitering around the top spot. This Combine Angel is a fun build. It's 95 tons of the Dragon's Fury, with a high-impact array of configurations. But more importantly, it's one of the sexiest mechs and artworks out of the Dark Age book when it dropped. I think it does need a bit of attention to bring it up to current visual and art standards, and to be of course brought in line with Scroggin's current Battletech style. But overall, it's just fantastic to look at. It's a solid battle mech on the field, and I think it's the most deserving Combine mech from the era for getting a plastic miniature. Really, the Tenshi is an example of why I think it's a shame so many people ignore the Dark Age. If for no other reason than it has some incredibly cool designs. I'd never let lore I dislike get in the way of me being interested in fascinating mechs and builds. Like, I dislike the Blakist era, despite being a huge fan of Comstar and the Word of Blake, and I love Celestials. Interestingly, the Tenshi seems a little similar to them. Must just be the name, am I right? Another example of a beautiful mech. It's visually striking. It exists as a premium mech right now from CGL, and it's got a unique way of handling itself. A mobile medium mech with hardened armor and an AES system in the legs to offset its hardened armor's limitations. It's brilliant. The Hammerhead brings something special to the table. Uniqueness is a rare thing in Battletech. Sometimes a machine is just going through the numbers. For example, it's just a Centurion with more or less guns can describe a lot of mechs that have appeared over time, and that can get pretty stale after a while. But there are tons of mechs from the Dark Age and ilClan era that just think outside of the box, as it were, and I think that's just fascinating. Obviously, there isn't much that needs to be done in terms of its appearance, as they've already got the 3D model. It just needs to be turned into plastic and put into a box set. I love the look of the new Grizzly from the Mercenaries Kickstarter, I'm not going to lie. While the Mastodon is also very Grizzly-like, I just love the look and style of the Rim Otter. They've already got the 3D model for it, since it's been a part of the new recognition guides. It's a fun 55-ton Omnimech, with effective loadouts and a sharp look. On top of that, its style is also more coherent with the general development of Clan Ghost Bear's mechs. The Grizzly family of mechs really helps build out realism in the setting, by showing consistency of development between a single family of mechs. Once more, no visual changes needed. Just gib plastic Rim Otter, please. Already available through Ironwind Metals, the Jade Phoenix is in the running for my favorite recognition guide mech. Really only matched by my like of the Eris, truthfully. I think it's a fantastic platform. It has an amazing set of in-game rules, and looks stunning. It's easily the best bird mech that they have put together for Clan Jade Falcon in the new era. It's got a wicked name too. They've already got the design. It'd be just incredible if this bad boy could be delivered in plastic. Definitely one of my top choices. Green Bird is almost as strong as Purple Bird, clearly. The last mech on our list. I love the Mad Dog. And while the Mad Dog 2 and 3 are okay, it just doesn't really do nearly as much for me as the Mad Dog 4. The 4 has a brilliant rework with its missiles, just in terms of the visuals I'm talking about, and I appreciate that very much. It is really the look of the Dark Age era upgrade of the classic in my view, and I'd love for this to be updated yet furthermore to the current standard of art and get dropped into the box sets. This being in plastic would be an instant grab for me. Much wow, very clan, big approval. So there you have it. That's the list. If you're looking for something extremely deep and insightful at this point, it's not going to be this time around. This was just a fun video from me, more or less publicly wishlisting what I would like to see on the model side of things. I find it incredibly unlikely that any of these picks will come to pass soon, and in some cases, I expect the revamps to be more muted than they should be. But these are the mechs I'm mostly looking forward to, that we haven't already gotten. I did crop about 30 mechs from this list just to make it releasable, but there were a ton of other standouts for me overall. These were just the ones that I was interested in the most when making the video. I didn't realize when refining down the list too, just how many of these mechs would end up being Comstar and Purple Bird machines. It's kind of funny, and I only noticed it in retrospect after finishing writing this, as well as adapting the visuals for the video. I'm going to be posting links in the comment section to all of the relevant mechs in a single pinned post for where you can find these either in metal or in resin right now. If they have miniatures at all, of course. So, as usual, if you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to like and check if you're subscribed to the channel. Next up, we begin 3055 proper with the Fireball. And as per usual, a huge thank you to all of the channel members. These videos are really only made possible because of viewers like you. So, what mechs are you looking most forward to that haven't been released in plastic yet? What's on your wish list? Let me know, and I'll catch you in the comments section below.